After spending 2 weeks travelling Vietnam, I was surprised to find that Cambodia was completely different to what I thought it was going to be. In this week's video, I take a speedboat from Vietnam to Cambodia, crossing the border via the Mekong River, and I also spend my 22nd birthday in Phnom Penh, where we visit the Royal Palace, the Killing Fields, and learn about the varying history of Cambodia. We left our hotel in Chau Doc near the border to take the speedboat from Vietnam to Phnom Penh, which takes around 6 hours. However, about 3 hours of that is just for the immigration/border crossing, which was an absolute nightmare. We had to stop on the Vietnam side of the border and then go 5 minutes up the river and then stop on the Cambodian side as well, and we were waiting at these places for about an hour to an hour and a half each. And I would absolutely recommend flying rather than this option, as there is no good reason to do it unless you want to travel south from Ho Chi Minh City, like we did. I spent a lot of the speedboat ride reading, as there honestly wasn't a lot to look at until you got close to Phnom Penh, so if you're planning on taking the speedboat, definitely bring something to entertain yourself. We arrived quite late in the evening and just picked up a sandwich for dinner. Something I was really surprised about and didn't know was that the Cambodian riel, or the local currency, isn't very strong, so they also accept the US dollar everywhere, which to be honest is really confusing. The next morning we had a city tour booked where we would first go to visit the Royal Palace. This place is pretty luxurious to say the least. I'm always a bit confused in some of the Asian countries where there's such an astounding degree of poverty, yet such luxury and indulgence in the religious, spiritual and royal heritage. For example, there's a silver pagoda and a gold pagoda there that has dozens if not hundreds of tiles of solid gold and silver, and the value of that single room would literally be priceless, let alone thinking about the entire complex. It's marvellous to see, but still a little bit hard to get your head around. Now, something I didn't know about Cambodia, and I'm guessing you probably don't either, is that they've had internal genocides. An estimated 1 million to 1.7 million people were killed and buried by the Communist Party of Cambodia during the Khmer Rouge rule of the country from 1975 to 1979, immediately after the end of the Cambodian Civil War. The mass killings were part of a broad state-sponsored Cambodian genocide, which is a pretty big thing to get your head around and also quite hard to experience even a small part of in reality. But I think that visiting these killing fields is something you should do in Cambodia, as it really makes you appreciate your own life and how lucky you are to live in perhaps the country you're from, but also the day and age in which we do, where it's difficult for people to do things in secret because there is so much documentation of what happens in the world. We then visited To Slung Genocide Museum. In the same period of the Khmer Rouge rule, an estimated 20,000 people were imprisoned here. This was another hard place to experience, as it's a pretty terrifying feeling to know that you're standing in a room where someone has suffered and later died. As well, it was actually originally a school and then they converted it into a prison, which is a horrifying concept. While we were there, we also found out that there was actually a Kiwi guy who was murdered there, who was sailing around the far south of Cambodia and ended up getting arrested and later murdered, even though the New Zealand government tried to intervene. I think it goes to show that no matter where you're from, some things always find a way to hit close to home. We then visited the National Museum, which is a stunning building housing a variety of classic works, mainly in Buddhist and Hindu styles. Although I have to be honest and say I was more impressed by the architecture than any of the artwork. From there we visited a local pagoda, which was our last stop in Phnom Penh before flying to Siem Reap. If I'm honest, I would have really liked to have spent longer in Phnom Penh, and I'm a bit disappointed that we headed to Siem Reap so soon. but I think it's a very underrated city that definitely exceeded my expectations, particularly after some of the things I didn't enjoy so much in Vietnam. I hope you've enjoyed this week's video, and I'll see you in Siem Reap.